Hello and welcome to Cranfield University. My name is Andrey Pavlov and I'm Professor of Strategy and Performance here at the School of Management. And in the studio with me, I've got Dr. Alessandro Giudici, Reader in Strategy, Head of Strategy Group, and the Director of Executive MBA at Bayes Business School. Alessandro, welcome to Cranfield.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Cranfield, I should say.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be back after my PhD 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we had you all day today. You spent an hour talking to our faculty and PhD students about your recent research as well. Tell us a little bit more about what you've presented and how it went.
First of all, let me thank you and your colleagues for the very productive meeting. I received quite a good number of very, very constructive comments that will help us going through the reviewing process for the journal effectively. So thank you first. The conversation per se was I think quite lively, so also with some familiar faces. It was a pleasure to meet after a long time, and but also it was kind of good to see so many PhD students attending as well.
Okay, tell us a little bit more about the paper that you've presented. What is it about? How does it fit into your research?
Yeah, so this paper is a sort of spin-off paper, part of my broader research agenda on the orchestration, what I call the orchestration of innovation.
Orchestration of innovation.
Yes, so the role of organizations at the center of an innovation network, for example, incubators, accelerators, corporate venture capital, and so on, in supporting innovation for members within the network. So this particular paper is a bit of a spin-off because we look at the role of intermediaries in the shape of social enterprises, small community organizations in Africa, more specifically in Kenya and Sierra Leone, and the role of what they do when they work with people in extreme poverty who self-excluded themselves from society, and so they need actually help just to think that they can contribute back to society. And so we conducted a 3-year-long study on these particular organizations.
So what are the findings? What have you found?
Well, we found, first of all, very vivid and even moving data. Now, bear in mind that the beneficiaries we interviewed working with these social intermediaries were people with really deep stories. In Sierra Leone, for example, survivors from the Ebola crisis or the war. In Kenya, people living at the borders of the slum, in Kibera and other slums in Nairobi, and not only. So what we found is that complementary to prior research that look at how these NGOs or social enterprises or even governments can help people in poverty through the provision of resources, let's say financial resources or even training in entrepreneurship, they too often forget those at the real borders of society. Those who do not just need the resources and the training, but also they lost hope. Okay, they're in a state so that they self-excluded themselves from society, and so they don't even want to participate in these programs. So we look at what the intermediaries do, and we emphasize especially the role of intermediaries in what we call the last meter of the engagement.
So not the last mile, but
not the last mile, the last meter. Really, people at the borders trying to help them to believe in themselves psychologically, while at the same time helping them come back to the broader social context. And I think what we also found very powerfully is the fact that when these people then start believing in themselves, they go through the entrepreneurship training, they start building their own micro companies, they start hiring people, they start contributing back to society. They are filled with gratitude, and they see themselves finally as actors that can contribute to society in a very constructive way.
So it's almost like a baseline of innovation, right? It's almost like coal face of a kind of economic activity.
It's the very, very first meter of economic activity, and that then can kickstart a process of innovation or micro-entrepreneurship, to be more precise, with a lot of impact and social value in terms of collective action.
Interesting. And it's interesting also that just listening to you talk about innovation in that way, you have a particular take on innovation, don't you? Because very often we think of innovation as a single person with a breakthrough idea, sweating the nights, and then coming up with a breakthrough product or something like this. But listening to the way you're talking about this, it's not quite that, right? You're thinking about innovation as a kind of systemic activity, or?
I think that's a good word. Innovation is a systemic activity, but it's also more and more, especially in the context of fast-moving technologies and the geopolitical situation, is really a process of collaboration, constructive collaboration between a variety of actors and stakeholders in a variety of contexts as well. So yes, what I call the hero entrepreneur is certainly important. You know, we have been just going through the OpenAI saga with the hero entrepreneur and all the big guys coming to the rescue. Very interesting, very important in terms of pushing the technological frontier. But what I'm more interested in is the role of this collaboration and the role of the actors, I call them intermediaries, in supporting this collaboration and in helping all the different players in society coming up with better sustainable innovation over time.
So innovation is essentially a collective ongoing process.
It's a collective ongoing process, and what I call orchestration is a distributed process of support.
So who are those actors? Who is involved in this collective distributed ongoing process?
Let me distinguish between two branches of my research for clarity.
Okay.
I look at this particular topic of orchestration of innovation, both in the, if you want, commercial world with large organizations and in the more socially oriented world, okay? So the actors, to an extent, overlap, but just for clarity, let me distinguish them. In the corporate world, we can think, for example, about, corporate venture capital organizations, okay? Inside large corporations, helping them, scout the market for new ideas, new partners, and so on and so forth. And I did quite a lot of work into this with some organizations in the past, especially with a technological angle. In the social space, instead, we are talking about foundations, global NGOs, and a variety of other actors. I'll give you a couple of examples from my research. A couple of years ago, I published a paper in Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice, which is a well-known academic journal.
Indeed.
And we studied the evolution of Impact Hub. So Impact Hub is the largest network of incubators focusing on social value creation in the world. What does it mean? It means that they only accept people as members, organizations as members, when they are engaged in some kind of social innovation, social impact kind of work, okay? So, and now it's a network of over 100 plus incubators around the world, but it was born in London. So my research looked at this particular organization and trying to understand how their governance system changed over time from a small organization in London to a global organization. And so we look at the evolution and the different pros and cons in the changes of that business model. So that's one take in my research. Another one instead, and this is where the current paper I presented today came from, I'm studying and working together with a Pan-African foundation. This foundation was started at the very, very beginning as a simple training, MSc basically, in Kenya, and then it grew into an MBA for Impact Entrepreneur in Kenya, and then they established the foundation. The foundation was a charity organization, and then over time the foundation expanded to 27 African countries. In each country there is a partner institution, like a university. There are partner venture capitals. There are partner organizations in a variety of senses. But what we also study is that over time, the foundation itself changed its structure. So today, it's participated by a lot of corporations as well, as part of their CSR agenda. So we are looking at how this network of orchestration of innovation in each country grew over time. And the paper today came out of that kind of work, because through the foundation, we also do a lot of work to build research capacity in Africa for local researchers and institutions. And so we came across these social intermediaries, and we thought that was really a great opportunity to deep dive into this final meter I was talking about.
I can see what you mean by orchestration, because it really is almost like an orchestra conductor, right? It's trying to make sure that different parts of this very complex system work together and deliver value.
Yeah, orchestration is a very dynamic concept, as the name says. For example, in this Pan-Africa Foundation, yes, it started from one country, then they established a branch in a different country, and so on and so forth. But over time, they started facing questions in terms of how do we build synergies between different countries? How do we build synergies for students or alumni, but also for researchers, also for partners as well? So the foundation now is engaged in a very, very rich set of activities that I call orchestration, the literature calls orchestration, which is ultimately, we are strategy professors, a corporate strategy perspective.
Indeed, but it's not just designing the strategy, it's making all of the parts
Yes.
work together.
Yes,
Yeah.
together for synergic value.
And there are so many questions I want to ask you, but before I kind of move on, you've mentioned several times this idea of intermediaries. So what are those? Who are those actors? What do they do?
Intermediaries can take different forms and shapes. So in the corporate world, you have this, the innovation arm of the corporation. Let's say the business unit dealing with innovation is an intermediary from the theoretical perspective because it coordinates, it connects the strategy of the organization with the outside world in terms of partners, in terms of the frontier of exploration of new technology and so on. So it makes the flow of knowledge from the outside in and the inside out more effective, okay? And there are a number of governance rules in terms of who is actually part of this innovation effort from the corporation perspective or not. There might be rules in terms of IP protection, what is in, what is out, and so on. So this is what we consider an orchestration problem.
And on the social side?
In the social side, instead, is more about nurturing the participants and making sure that they connect with one another in a way that creates this synergic value I was talking about. So there is a lot more emphasis on the value, not for the central actor, let's say for the corporation, to extract the value from the network of innovation, but there is more emphasis in building value for the periphery of the network, so that all the participants can benefit from this orchestrated activity of coordination.
So is there a difference between social innovation and social entrepreneurship? Because we talk quite a lot about social entrepreneurship here in Cranfield.
That's a very interesting question. I have a paper under review specifically on this distinction.
Okay.
Yeah, and
so what's the answer?
The answer is, let's keep it simple, but so a social entrepreneur is a concept that comes from traditional and commercial entrepreneurship. So the emphasis is on what a person normally, or a team of people, do in searching for opportunities to create social value in a financially, commercially sustainable way.
Right.
Okay, so the social entrepreneurs search and creates opportunities to create this social value, but he or she has to do it in a sustainable way from a enterprise point of view.
Sure.
Social innovation is more of a body of knowledge focused on the outcomes at the societal level, at the ecosystem level, if you want to use a more buzzword concept. So the social innovation in terms of what are the spillovers for society of this innovation? How do we measure this innovation? What is the innovation in terms of the growth of prosperity in Africa, thanks to the work of this foundation and many other organizations engaged in this kind of work in Africa, and so on and so forth. So whereas social entrepreneurship focuses on the actors, the social innovation story is more about the outcomes.
Okay, and it's presumably more focused on the idea of innovation, of being innovative as well. Whereas I suppose entrepreneurship may or may not be innovative.
Entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily have to be innovative. It's more about the opportunity, okay? Whereas the social innovation, yes, it has to be innovative, at least in terms of spillover effects, in terms of not necessarily the products, but in terms of the benefits for society and the impact on society, yes.
Okay. So I suppose a double-barreled question for you. So as you said, this is not a single study or not a couple of studies, but it's a program of research. Yeah. Right? And so you've done things both in corporate innovation and
correct.
Social innovation. So presumably the findings of your research and the research of your colleagues in this space have to find their way into policy as well. So
we hope so.
I hope so. Hopefully, maybe I shouldn't say presumably. Hopefully. So I suppose double-barreled question: what are some of your key findings, like top-level themes that you see across your studies, and how do you think they should translate to policy?
That's a very, very tough question, Andrey. I think to keep it simple, at very high level. I think the literature research is very clear in pointing out some of the challenges in social innovation, in social space, especially some of the challenges of these large global organizations dealing with extreme poverty, to use this particular example. And also in the commercial world with innovation in terms of startup creation and new idea formation and so on. I think more and more we see how ineffective on the one hand these kind of top-down programs could be, because they normally, there is a risk that they benefit those who could get the benefit anyway by themselves.
But because they are central actors.
Because they're central actors and they have the right connections already, is what I said earlier about this paper I presented. You know, the people we interview, the beneficiaries, are not even willing to participate. If they were willing to participate and had prior capabilities to be able to participate, probably they keep being helped over and over again. So these top-down programs, ultimately, they run a risk of being ineffective. So, which is unsurprisingly bring us to a position where some of the global NGOs are retrenching from this kind of ground level work, focusing more on global advocacy, trying to persuade the governments to intervene, etc. Very, very important work. What we are saying is the government, yes, should be receptive of this, but it's more important for the government money not to flow just top down, but to create the infrastructure, the meso infrastructure. So to help these intermediate organizations to systematize themselves, to grow, to flourish, so that then the benefit remains closer to the actual beneficiaries.
Because that's where the locked value is, right?
Yes.
And that's what we need to unlock.
Another example in the commercial world, I have a forthcoming program of research on the role of these intermediate organizations in Eastern Europe, for example. So it's a very interesting context because we're talking about countries part of the European Union, okay? But post-Soviet countries where entrepreneurship wasn't really there or was really accepted. There is still a stigma for entrepreneurs. And suddenly they are part of the European Union, so there is a lot of money and resources flowing from top down from the European Union, part of Horizon and many other programs. So here we have a situation where the money comes top down, but bottom up, the receptiveness is still unclear. So we are studying how these intermediate organizations start developing over time to make the link between the top down and the bottom up more effective. Okay? In Africa, you don't really have this problem because in several countries, the top down intervention is normally coming from abroad.
Sure. Okay, so it sounds like you've thought about it for a long time and you've done it in different contexts around the world. So maybe a tricky question for you. Where globally do you think is the next wave of innovation coming from? Where is the engine of innovation globally?
I give you two paths of my response. One is geographic, the other one is technology driven.
Okay.
The geography answer is I don't just go to Africa because of these the global challenges. Yes, they're there, but also because Africa is an incredibly exciting continent with a lot of innovation or innovation capabilities popping up everywhere, especially in some countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa lead the way when it comes to technology, but Rwanda is also doing incredibly well, the West Coast as well, and Uganda as well, okay? So there is a lot of innovation kind of brewing under the surface, and very young demographics, like millions and millions, as you know better than me, of very under 18, growing very fast with technological competence, probably better than a lot of kids in the Western world. And so in the future, you will see even stronger waves of innovation coming from Africa. It's not by chance that one of the first real fintech success stories, M-Pesa, came from Kenya. And then kind of was the first micropayment system that really got to scale. But frankly, I take my students every year to Kenya and then to other countries to open their eyes about the future of innovation. I think Africa is the future, geographically speaking.
Okay.
And in terms of policy implications, I think policymakers in the UK, in the European Union, and beyond, I think they would be properly advised to engage with this forthcoming wave of innovation more productively. Yes, it's true that there are issues of immigration, etc. But actually, Africa, within a few decades, politics aside, is going to be the real humus for innovation. I think this is what I see. The other part of my answer is the technology answer.
Okay.
Because we discussed with some colleagues one of the other days. I see, there's a lot of buzz around artificial intelligence, of course.
Sure.
All right,
Reasons,
understandably. And But I see artificial intelligence as a sort of bridge between the last 2 or 3 decades of technological innovation that were more focused on the, I call it the demand side, solution for consumers, users, sensors, etc., in terms of data, to the next wave that instead is going to be more and more on the supply side, so robotics, Industry 4.0, and all this kind of supply side innovation. So artificial intelligence is the bridge because it brings the data into the production side to create the value for the future. So if you ask me where the investors or where the future should be, the future will be coming from, is probably on these kind of robotics, industrial machineries.
So technologically enabled supply side.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that
interesting.
The age is moving from yet another app to finally something incredibly cool for the future when it comes to big machineries and big innovation.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is a short interview, and we already have covered enormous ground. So we kind of talked about your current program of research, social innovation, corporate innovation, engines of innovation, role of intermediaries, you name it. So it's quite a lot of stuff here. And I suppose my final question for you is, if there was one thing you'd like to leave us with here at Cranfield, what would it be?
I think that innovation, real innovation, sustainable innovation is a collaborative effort that needs to be supported. The real innovators, the heroes are the exception. The real innovators are active part of a network of collaboration and multi-stakeholder engagement. So I think that's the first message. The second message, so the policymakers should be supporting this infrastructure of collaboration first. Secondly, there is a growing number of people out there in the world with real needs, real challenges, and the numbers is only going to go up. So we can afford, and I think it's a moral duty, but it's also an economic necessity to do our best to actually involve them productively in a way that is better for them and is better for the whole world.
Fantastic. Alessandro, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrey, for inviting me.
And thank you for watching.